Africa Business News, proudly sponsored by EY.
Africa, it is huge, it is diverse, and its business landscape fascinating and dynamic. And that's our business here on your favorite weekly African business stop. In Nairobi, we have Bonnie Tunya bringing us the latest from East Africa. Esther Aoyin in Lagos gives us news from West Africa. And joining me a little later in Johannesburg is Tumiso Greater. My name is Victor Homoiswana, and this is the Africa Business News. Now, Bonnie, I know you covered this story. Kenya Airways, a great aviation story to come out of East Africa, has battled rocket and fuel costs, industrial action, and the disruption by Ebola. Former CEO had expressed hope that the losses would have been reversed by now, but instead KQ had to seek a $42 million bailout from the government of Kenya. Is this a sign of worse times ahead?
Well, Victor, the story of Kenya Airways is one that we all wish could be better. And like you said, the airline is set to borrow 4.2 billion Kenyan shillings from the government as it continues to battle financial troubles arising from heavy load of debt that has been carrying in the tough operating environment. Now, Victor, the bailout plan, which is contained in the supplementary budget that was tabled in Parliament Wednesday, comes as the airline navigates tough operational headwinds that have obviously left it to record losses in the past couple of years. The bailout should spare the airline the pain of taking in more expensive commercial loans that would have put it strain on it and the cash flows. Now, Victor, KQ's liabilities already stand at 70 billion Kenyan shillings, and the airline recently said it was relying on debt to pay its workforce, exposing the extent of the financial difficulties it has been going through. Now, what is interesting, Victor, is that news of the planned government boost comes just 2 weeks after the health minister lifted the ban on visitors from Ebola-struck Liberia, giving KQ a window to start recovering revenues it lost from the West African operations from last year's outbreak.
Problems, they say, don't come in singles, but in battalions. Let's wrap up East Africa with a look at Ethiopia, its strategic blueprint, the Growth and Transformation Program, or the GTP rather, attracting lots of investment, an average of $1 billion a year?
Well, Victor, Ethiopia is turning out to be quite a story. They just concluded their elections last week, and obviously a lot of people are looking to more opening up of Ethiopia into the East African economies. But Victor, in the past 5 years, Ethiopia has made great strides in breaking the old age thinking that Eastern African countries, particularly the sub-Saharan nations, are not comfortable for foreign direct investment. Now, Ethiopia disapproved this analogy through attracting huge number of foreign investment, both in terms of capital and different projects, Victor. Now, in recent days, the country is becoming an investment hub for there exist very suitable conditions such as peace, stability. I just mentioned the recent elections and similar different incentives that are drawing foreigners back into this East African economic giant. But the government has allotted due attention for the development and expansion of infrastructure. Big major projects have been reported: road, railway, hydroelectricity that are under construction, and more of them are near completion. Owing to these, investors from different corners of the world, Victor, are coming back to this country. 80 million in terms of population is a very good market for anyone who would want to manufacture anything literally from the Ethiopian space. And so, Victor, a lot of excitement, a lot of jubilation and positivity coming out of that market, but only time will tell if indeed they can leverage on this.
And say we didn't tell you about Ethiopia. Thank you, Bonnie, coming to us from Nairobi, Kenya. Our next stretch sees Tumiso Greater bringing us top stories out of Southern Africa. We are still with Africa Business News, and in our Johannesburg studio, I'm with Tumiso Greater. Nothing could have prepared us for this, even as Blatter got re-elected as the head of FIFA, of course. I'm talking about the damning scandal about the campaign to bring the World Cup soccer to South Africa. The then head of local organizing committee, Danny Jordan, admitting at the weekend that indeed $10 million was paid, but not as a bribe, he added. To me, I don't understand. This is not a regular payment. What do you make of this admission way after the World Cup? that there was money paid to facilitate the bringing of the World Cup to South Africa.
That's right, Victor. And just to go back, as you know, Danny Jordan, he's now the newly elected Nelson Mandela Bay executive mayor and was also the president of the South African Association of Football. $10 million US, that's what apparently approximately 120 million rand.
Yeah.
It's not a bribe. So what was this money used for? Well, this is what they've said. This money was in fact used to pay, and I'll tell you, the Confederation of the North, Central American and Caribbean Association Football, also known as CONCAF. This was back in 2008. Now, this was seen as South Africa's contribution to the development of football. Now, Danny Jordan has gone on to say that that money was not paid from government funds. FIFA made this payment directly. But the amount that was paid by FIFA in order to help with hosting the event was $20 million US short. So 10 million went to building the SAFA house, and $10 million US was made for this CONCAF payment, which of course was said to be for the development of football. And they still say firm that they did nothing wrong, although it was a week of denials from government and local authorities that there was no such amount that was ever being paid anyway.
And think about how much talk we made of the legacy before the World Cup. I'm sure we could have been told at the time that there'll be more money going into the less developed countries. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, of course, but it's just how it came out. But what do I know? I'm just an anchor here. Talk to me about all roads leading to Cape Town this week for the World Economic Forum Africa chapter. What do you think will come out of this time?
I just want to go back a little bit, Victor, before we speak about the World Economic Forum, that I was at the media briefing where the sports minister was there. What did come out of it? Things that you don't necessarily see in the headlines on the newspaper. I did see the minister next to his deputy minister, chuckling and laughing about the situation that has unfolded and likening the events to somewhat of a mafia movie or something from the Africa Magic Channel. This raised the questions as to how seriously is the South African government taking these allegations. Back to UEFA, yes, the World Economic Forum kicks off on the 3rd of June until the 5th. President Jacob Zuma will be there along with his delegation. Now, apart from mining and beneficiation, the spotlight will also be on South Africa's ocean economy. Ways in which we can get employment from there, really leverage on it. And just the theme for this year is called Then and Now, Reimagining Africa's Future. So really hoping to see some constructive conversations and policies that will come from this particular meeting.
Talk about the ocean. I'm told that the Chinese vessels, about 74 so Chinese vessels fishing illegally, not in South African waters, but in West African waters, really posing a real danger to the stability of the oceans. Tumi Greater, thank you very much. Next up, Esther Awin in Lagos chats to us about West Africa. Well, Esther, he's no longer president-elect, but President Muhammadu Buhari. He is in office now, but the violence in Borno State seems set to continue. He's not going to have it easy. Tell us about the first week in office of President Buhari and what his stance on Boko Haram has been so far.
Well, Victor, President Buhari is still talking tough on the Boko Haram menace, and this time he's putting his money where his mouth is. Now, as a first step to tackling the sect, the president has transferred the military command and control center from the federal capital territory in Abuja to Maiduguri, which is a frequent target area and birthplace of Boko Haram. Also, he will meet with presidents of Chad and Niger this week to discuss the fight against the militant group. Now, security analysts believe this sends a very strong message to Nigerians and indeed Boko Haram itself about his intent to take the war right to the doorsteps of the enemy. Meanwhile, Boko Haram seems determined to test the political will of the new government. There have been multiple attacks in 3 different parts of Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. We saw that on the day of the inauguration and the day after it. So it remains to be seen what the response of the military under President Buhari will be in the coming weeks.
Another Nigerian headline is at the headquarters of the African Development Bank in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, where former Agriculture Minister of Nigeria has been elected president of the Development Finance Institution, the African Development Bank, to replace Dr. Donald Kaberuga. What do the Nigerians and West Africans make of this, Esther?
Well, Victor, it was a very interesting lineup of candidates this year, as all the 8 candidates were heavyweights in their various capacities. Now, as you know, Nigeria had made 3 previous attempts at occupying the coveted post without success, but thankfully, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina has broken the jinx. Now, Nigerians and indeed the whole of West Africa feel very proud and honored at this appointment, but more importantly, they're looking forward to more support from the African Development Bank to develop the region, play a bigger role in eradicating poverty and foster economic growth that is sustainable and, very important, also inclusive.
Okay, Tullow Oil is the most celebrated investor in the oil industry of Ghana. With the oil price having displayed so much volatility, Tullow has had to do something. But $500 million put into a hedging program? Was that the only way out for Tullow Oil, and what will it do for the company's financial position?
Well, Victor, the company certainly does believe so. According to the CEO of Tullow, the business environment has changed significantly, and rising costs require deploying all measures to ensure efficiency and remain profitable going forward. Now, the hedging program covers about 55% of its production in 2015, which would average about 90,000 barrels a day. Now, this helps Tullow secure up to about 55% of its oil production price for this year. Now, the measure has also ensured that any sudden fall in the price of crude oil at the international market from the region of about $115 per barrel to $53 per barrel, which we saw sometime in February this year, would only affect about 45% of the company's sale, as it has secured a higher price in its hedge book. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if this strategy pays off for the company in the short to medium term.
A day in the life of Aiden Heavy, the CEO of Tullow Oil. Thank you, Esther Awini. That ushers us into this week's trivia, and we also get to hear about the favorite stocks of Esther and Bonnie. Stay with Africa Business News. And at this point, we ask you, Bonnie Tunya and Esther Awini, which share you would recommend I buy in your region? Starting with you, Bonnie, I'm sure you're not going to say KQ.
Definitely not KQ, Victor, on account of what has been happening this week. My stock pick for the week will be CFC Stanbic. Banking sector, always profitable, good numbers coming out of the East African space. We're talking about 113 flat for the share price, moving up 9%. This is where you need to put your money, Victor.
Okay, banks are back in vogue. Is it the same for you, Esther Awini, in Lagos?
Well, absolutely. I'm staying with the banking sector today, and today my stock pick is Wema Bank. Now, this bank, it's a mid-tier bank, a regional bank. It ran into troubled waters during the financial crisis, but a few years later, we've seen a new management that has dramatically turned around the fortunes of this bank, and it's now one of the most sought-after banks on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Yes, the numbers have been very good, especially the numbers that the company reported in the last quarter and the full year for 2014. So today, I'll go with Wema Bank.
All right, we're back in the financial sector, both sides, both ends of the continent. In our trivia this week, I ask Esther and Bonnie, which country celebrates Martyrs' Day on June the 3rd? The clue is, it is in East Africa.
Martyrs' Day, Victor, has to be Uganda.
Certainly, more a religious holiday than political one. Uganda's Martyrs' Day celebrations are held every 3rd of June, a public holiday in the country, and they take place at the Uganda Martyrs Shrine, Namugongo, in Kampala. Millions of people from all over are set to make pilgrimage to this holy land. Celebrations kicking off with a novena in various parts of the country, especially in places where different martyrs were either born or killed. The novena at Namugongo is attended by pilgrims from neighboring countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and the DRC, and from some other continents. Happy Martyrs' Day to the people of Uganda then. We thank Esther Awini out of Lagos, Bonnie Tunya in Nairobi, and earlier on Tumiso Great in Johannesburg. Stay tuned to CNBC Africa. Until next week, au revoir.